Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a term you see absolutely everywhere, from corporate reports to the news, risk governance. We're going to break down what it actually means, and more importantly, why so many people seem to be talking past each other when they use it.
So let's just start with the big question. You've probably been there, right? You're reading a report and you see the word governance, and you know it's supposed to be important, but what does it actually mean? It can feel incredibly vague.
And hey, if you're a little confused, you are definitely not alone. Even the experts have trouble pinning it down. They call it a highly polysemous term, which is just a really fancy way of saying it has a whole bunch of different meanings. It's a slippery word, for sure.
But here's the key thing to understand. The problem isn't that the word is meaningless. No, not at all. The problem is that you have different groups of people, think academics, regulators, and corporations, all using the exact same word to talk about completely different things. It's like they're speaking different languages.
Okay, so let's pull back the curtain on this. The secret to understanding risk governance is realizing there are really three distinct worlds, three different languages, all operating at the same time. And once you see these three worlds, everything starts to click into place.
So what are these three worlds? Well, you've got academia, which looks at the big picture system. Then there's professional practice. This is your auditors and regulators, who are all about the rule book. And finally, you have industry rhetoric, which is where corporations tell their strategic story.
First up, academia. When academics talk about governance, they're thinking big. They're not just looking at one company. They're asking, how do we, as a whole society or a big organization, make fair and good decisions when we're staring down complex, uncertain risks, like, say, climate change or a global pandemic?
Okay, now let's jump over to the professionals, the regulators, the auditors. For them, it gets a lot more concrete, a lot more down to earth. Governance is about things you can check off a list: board oversight, internal controls, clearly defined rules. It's a system of checks and balances that you can actually audit.
And then we have our third world, the corporations themselves. For them, governance becomes a powerful strategic story. It's the narrative they tell their investors, their customers, and the public to say, hey, we're resilient, you can trust us, we're in control.
So, how does this all work in the real world? Let's dive a little deeper, starting with the professionals' world of compliance and control. This is where governance gets very tangible very quickly.
You see, in this world, governance risk isn't some fuzzy concept. It's about very specific things. We're talking about out-of-control executive compensation, a company not following through on its ESG promises, misusing customer data, or making really questionable investment choices. These are the red flags that auditors are trained to spot. And this whole world kind of runs on an operating system known as the 3 lines of defense. Think of it like defending a castle. The first line is your frontline soldiers, the day-to-day business units that put controls in place. The second line is the watchtower, your risk and compliance teams who monitor those controls. And the third line, that's internal audit, the independent inspectors who make sure the walls are actually strong.
Now, what's really fascinating is how professionals actually test this system. They don't just take the board's word for it. They work from the ground up. They check the tangible evidence to see if it matches the tone from the top. So, for example, they won't just listen to a CEO talk about fairness. They'll look at the company's pay equity data to see if it's really happening.
All right, now let's switch gears and step into that second world we talked about, the corporate world, where governance is all about telling a compelling strategic story.
And this is a perfect example. Take a look at this page from Macquarie Group's 2024 annual report. You'll notice they don't just give you a list of rules. No, they frame their governance as a core part of their entire business model. It's central to how they operate. And to make that story feel real and credible, they use data. They report right here that their risk team completed 961 specific environmental and social risk reviews just in 2024. That number isn't just a metric. It's a piece of evidence. It's a proof point in their story that they are being diligent.
And when you visualize that data, you can see exactly where they're putting their energy. Look at the heavy focus on high-impact sectors like mining and energy. This is how a company shows it's translating a big, broad governance policy into real, targeted action on the ground. And that story doesn't just stop at risk reviews. It extends all the way up to their biggest strategic goals. Here you can see their 4-part climate strategy, which links their governance framework directly to tackling one of the biggest global challenges out there.
So, okay,
We have these three different languages being spoken. We have the academic system, the professional's rulebook, and the corporate story. Why on earth does understanding this difference matter so much? Why is it so critical?
Well, this table just lays it all out. Look at the different purposes. Academics are chasing legitimacy and trust. Professionals demand compliance and control. And industry? They're trying to project reassurance and confidence. They have completely different goals, they're talking to different people, and they even use a different style of language. And this chart just hammers that point home. Each world has a totally different priority. For academics, it's all about legitimacy. For professionals, it's control. And for industry, it's value and strategy. This difference in priorities is exactly why they so often seem to talk right past one another.
Now, the most important takeaway from all of this is the risk of what's called a say-do gap. This is the dangerous space where a company's big aspirational story doesn't quite match the reality of its internal controls. So, for example, a company might publish a beautiful report on its commitment to data privacy. That's the say. But an auditor might find that the actual systems for protecting customer data are weak and underfunded. That's the do. And that gap, that's where the trouble starts.
So I want to leave you with a quick toolkit you can use. The next time you hear someone talking about governance, ask yourself these questions. First, are they talking about the governance of big societal decisions or the governance of internal systems? Second, are they giving you real operational evidence or just telling you that a committee exists? And finally, where's the proof that stakeholder trust is actually being built into the process?
And we'll end on this thought. The next time you hear a company or a regulator or any expert use the word governance, I want you to stop and ask yourself, which of the three languages are they speaking? Because now that you know the difference, you have the power to hear what's really being said.